Welcome to another episode of the TALAS VOZ podcast, where we're talking to superintendents from around the great state of Texas. And we have a very special guest, none other than the superintendent of the Houston Independent School District, Mr. Mike Miles, joining us on the show. Mike, it's great to have you. Thank you for taking some time.
No problem. Good to see you again, Rick.
It's not like you're busy or you got anything going on over there in Houston. So definitely want to jump right in and honor your time. For some of our listeners and viewers that may not know a little bit about your story, can you share just a brief kind of overview of your career and then ultimately how you ended up in Houston ISD?
Yes, I'm an atypical superintendent. This is actually my third career. Education is. Started off as an Army officer after graduating from West Point. Was in the Army Rangers. Was a company commander, and then left to become a diplomat. So I went back to school, Berkeley and Columbia, and then got a job at the State Department, and then became a diplomat to Poland and Russia at the end of the Cold War. My wife and I had a couple of kids, so we came back home to Colorado, and that's when I started teaching. So I've been a teacher, principal, assistant superintendent now for a superintendent of either a district or charter network for 20 years. Been in education 30.
You know, I got to ask you this one. So who's harder to deal with, the diplomats from other countries or board members?
That's a no-brainer. You could probably guess it's the board members by far.
So it's what you're saying is it's easier to negotiate trade deals than it is to get to get something.
We were dealing with chemical weapons reduction and reducing the nuclear arsenal and all those kind of things back in the day, and the wall coming down and everything like that. Yes, and that's harder than working with an elected board.
Oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't want to go off script there, but I just had to ask because I'm sure you've got some great stories. What about it? Because obviously you were in Dallas ISD and had done some great work there, and then you get the sign that the Houston job is open, and obviously it had been in the news, a lot of things going on, not all of it positive, but what was compelling about the Houston ISD job?
When I was asked to apply, I said no, and I just didn't want to deal with an elected board. And I'm sorry. I didn't want to perseverate on elected boards, but I didn't want to deal with that. And there are good elected board members out there. Okay, now we don't have one now in Houston. We have a board of managers, and they're great. But the reason is because often elected board members try to get into operations, and they don't always put kids first. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. There's other interests sometimes, and a lot of those interests have to do with adult issues. I said no, but then I was told, "Great, it's a board of managers, and that board of managers are not elected. They are appointed by the Commissioner of Education." So, as a result, I said, "Well, let me think about it," and then, long story short, I did apply.
Do you have some type of process that you go through? You said you had 3 careers. Is there something you kind of go through when you're selecting a job? Is it, family? How do you go through the process?
So I don't know if there's anything that formal, but there is one thing, and that is you can tell that the through line for my whole career, each one of them, has been public service. And I call myself a professional public service. So I've served the public interest as a soldier, as a statesman, and now as an educator. And so that's the one common theme throughout all of them.
When you got the job, obviously you had to put together some pieces, right? Your team. How do you go about evaluating and knowing, okay, who can I tap that's going to understand what this is, understand the time frame? Because I would argue you've done things on a very expedited time frame to get some great outcomes for students. What do you look for, and how do you go about tapping your team?
The biggest thing, and the team here is the cabinet level and deputy chiefs, so chiefs and deputy chiefs, because it's a big district, and so I don't really select principals or executive directors. But to answer your question, When I came here, I wanted to bring some people who already knew how a new education system would work and how rigor was and how pay for performance was and those sorts of things. Things people who had worked with me in the past. So I had a handful of people that I could bring. Um, but there were several other cabinet level members that I interviewed, and I put them through a mini interview process where they had to answer scenarios about systems. So a lot of the scenarios were not even about education. It's about organizations and organizational effectiveness and leadership. And so I was able to really let some excellent systems think, people who had a broad perspective and could work cross disciplinarily, cross functionally, and so cross department. And that has turned out to be a very helpful thing.
What are some indicators of when you know someone is not going to be a good fit, right? Like maybe that they've either started the job or you inherited them, but then quickly it becomes evident. All right, this person's not a good fit for what we're trying to do here.
I think it's very evident if you're a person like me who looks at the metrics and the intersection between the department or section that you lead and the others, if a person isn't similarly doesn't have the same mindset. Also, whether or not they have a mindset towards real effectiveness, meaning the metrics and how we go about the goals and how we go about achieving those goals. There's a process for doing that, and there's a sense of urgency around all of it. And so you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if people want to do things the way that they've always been done, regardless of the outcome. And so that's the biggest sign, right? We have new outcomes, new metrics, and it requires a different way of thinking and a different way of operating often.
Is there a dead giveaway? Like if you're having a conversation, is there any like just a phrase or maybe a lack of kind of ownership on something? Like is there a dead giveaway? Like give me a poker a card, one card to play.
There's nothing like that. I mean, there's no one thing
Okay.
that gives away, but things like, well, this is how we did it, or um, this is the way we have to do it, or the regulation says we need to do it this way, or we can't do that because, and then they cite some compliance thing or whatever. Those are the giveaways for me. I mean, obviously not any one thing, but that sort of thinking where it's like we can't do it because this is how it's supposed to be done. Um, that's not going to get what we need.
Absolutely, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's extreme ownership is what I like to call it. Like if it's not going well, then it's you own it, right? And you own the changes, you own the process, you own everything that has to do with those student outcomes.
So we can't do it that way. What is the way we can do it legally?
Yes, I mean, I think to a large degree, we've boxed ourselves in a little bit in education, meaning we're not good at playing outside the lines, and obviously not the legal lines, but the things in which we think are possible for kids. And it's usually what we place on a system or our own insecurities that don't allow us to like rethink, all right, this has never worked, why do we keep doing it? Let's try something. And that kind of leads me to my next question. I mean, your NES system has been wildly successful. I don't think that anyone thought, from your biggest fans to your biggest critics, that it was going to be this successful. And I'm asking you to boil it down into how has it been so successful. I know there's a lot of reasons, but just the crux of why you believe it's been so successful in Houston.
Two reasons, and this is the really short version of why it works. But number one, the job of the cabinet and the superintendent is to set up the conditions for success and to maintain or implement well. That's the first thing. So it has been successful because we set up the conditions for that. What do I mean? Um, we set up very clearly what the expectations are and what happens when you don't meet expectations. Now that sounds like rigorous or too rigorous for some people, but being clear about what the expectations are helps you implement well. The second thing is we set up a system for monitoring what we think the outcome should be. So you don't just put in an MES system, you don't just put in high quality instruction, you have to monitor it, and in order to monitor, you have to set up the measures for monitoring. In other words, for example, just one, we started by saying there's going to be one executive director for every 7 NES schools, so that that executive director could monitor and would have the appropriate span of control to do so. One executive director could monitor 20 schools. See, we set that measure up first. And then third thing is there's actually more than that, but let me just go a couple more. Accountability. We made it clear what accountability actually meant, what it looks like, and what is the system for holding people accountable. Who actually gets removed for continued failure to meet expectations. See, and I haven't talked about one instructional strategy yet. And these are things that have to happen first. The fourth thing is we took autonomy away. So there were 274 on instruction, rather 274 schools. All of them lost the autonomy on instruction first, and now they're slowly earning autonomy. So again, I could have started with number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 reason, and yet if you don't do these things, a new curriculum, instructional focus doesn't mean as much. So I hope your listener will kind of hone in on that as why NES works really well. And the second thing is that it's totally focused on instruction. But that second is a distant second to what I talked about.
I totally understand. It is essentially from the jump. Everyone understands the expectations, the systems that are required to meet the expectations, the accountability along the way, and who owns what within that process before you even get to okay, we need to do this or
Yes,
whatever instructional practice is.
that's right, Rick. That you got it.
I love it. I like to think about it as always a process, right? From kind of a roadmap is kind of how my brain works. So it just helps me think about it in a different way. I'm asking you to speculate a little bit here, but we've got a lot of colleagues around the state, and not everybody is necessarily doing well in terms of student outcomes. Amongst all the other stuff that swirls, why wouldn't and maybe they are, and I'm just not unaware of it, but why wouldn't school districts take a look and say, man, they're having some outstanding results in Houston. So before we get to a level where it's panic mode, that last year before the commissioner comes in and says, hey, it's time to go, why not adopt what you're doing? Why not? Is there a reason that you think that it's not catching as fast as I would believe it should? Because it doesn't. I don't know. I see results. I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm not the smartest person in the room, so I'm going to go find what's working and sit there and learn. But I don't get the feel of that.
I can tell you a couple things, but before the preamble to the answer to that question is that there are a lot of districts going to third future schools. That's a network I ran for your listeners. That's a network I ran before I came to Houston, and they have a similar model because I started this NES model in third future schools first, and so they're going to third future schools to avoid takeover. In other words, third future schools is a turnaround network. In other words, they take the schools that are D or F and turn them around, and they write 1882 partnership agreements to do that. So they've gotten a whole bunch of requests, many that they've had to turn down because there's just too many requests. So people are paying attention to the model. Why don't they do it as a district? Why do they have to go and do a charter or 1882 partnership? I mean, two main reasons. Number one, those conditions I said that we set up first to set up the conditions for success, that's the hardest part. That part that gets the pushback. Not too many people are gonna argue about a curriculum, especially, one that's vetted or that other people have used, right? But they'll argue about Accountability? You mean to tell me that repeated failure to meet expectations in instruction will get a teacher or principal fired? Nobody wants to hear that. Or you talk about monitoring. I don't want, the pushback is I don't want my principal in the room. Well, and we set a monitoring regimen where that is part of the deal, where it's on the job coaching. That's the thing that gets pushed back. And so this notion of high expectation, and expectations for us is not aspirational. It's something we're going to, we know where the bar is and we're going after it. And you don't, it's not just a nice thing to say or do. Accountability is a real thing. Every district out there says, "Oh yeah, we have high expectations and we hold people accountable." It's like, well, let's define those terms. And when you define them in real terms, that's what gets the pushback. So that's number one. Number two, uh, we conduct whole scale systemic reform. That means a lot of things, operational things, all at one time. And so our profession is used to go slow to go fast and do one thing well at a time. And we just fundamentally turn that on.
Yeah, I remember you sharing the first time we had a chance to visit. You shared that perspective, and it's always stuck with me. Matter of fact, I was mentioning it to a superintendent in a different state a couple of days ago about just having to do everything at once and do it well, which is beyond all the other stuff, a massive undertaking that we could probably go 3 hours at least on. But that stuck with me because I remember that vividly. You explaining how you couldn't just take one thing and try to perfect it because the timeline was too short, and it ultimately, your next thing you know, you're in 5 years still working on one thing. So that's a great perspective. That's a great perspective for our aspiring leaders. Which, one of the things that I think are a lot of superintendents and cabinet members, for that matter, are coming into their roles quicker, a little bit younger, a little less experienced. What are some of the hard truths that you could share with some of our leaders that are wanting to get into transformational work, or think they, hey, this is what I believe in? Are there some things that they need to know before they take that journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not an easy answer. I'll just give you a couple of things. I I think know what you want to do and know what you can do, right? So know who you are, know what capacity you have to grow and learn, of course, but also what capacity you have to move systems. And if you want to transform a system, a struggling district, then understand what does that actually mean? What does that actually take? And part of that, what it takes, is a board that wants to also change. So if you're a new superintendent or a relatively inexperienced one, and you believe that kids need to read, write, and do math, and you need to get ready for the year 2030, year 2035, then you have to understand if it's a struggling district that that requires transformation. And if the board isn't willing to change, then don't go there. Yeah. Go to a place where they're not either you change your stuff and say, well, I'll be happy with moving the needle a little bit, or you go to a job where they won't change, and you have the capacity to do that.
Is there an indicator, like, for a superintendent or an aspiring superintendent that's starting to interview, something that's a kind of a check to see if a board is really willing to jump in and do some different things? Is there anything that you would recommend asking them as you're kind of kicking the tires on different roles?
Yeah, great question. And you don't know for sure. You can look at the past board meetings, and read articles in newspaper or whatever, which, something I did. So look at the film, the footage, the game footage, look at the game footage first to see how they're actually operating and whether or not they're getting too much into operations. And then, I believe what they say. If they say they want change, and at the board meetings are actually looking for outcomes. None of this, oh, we're doing great. We just want to hear good stories. Look at their data. And if the data is struggling, like you only have 20% of your kids reading at grade level, and that's not a conversation at the board meeting, that's a clear sign that they're not focused on the outcomes that they need to be focused on.
Yeah, yeah. You guys just had your big event, your kind of state of the district type event there. Would you mind just sharing? Because there may not be some people that are fully understand the type of success and impact y'all have had for students. Could you share just some stats and some growth measures that not only kind of where y'all started, but now to where you sit, the change that's happening?
I'll be brief with this. We had the transformation conference is what you're talking about. One of the things we do at the transformation conference is we put everybody on buses and we send them to schools. I think this year we had 11 different schools we sent them to because there were 350 people we needed to put on a bus to go to these schools. So they got to see for themselves, because the data is one thing, and I'm going to give you a couple of data points, but in the end of the day, are the kids learning well, and are the teachers teaching well? I mean, that's kind of the mark, right? I mean, you can tell teachers are teaching well whether the kids are learning, and if that's happening, then everything else will be okay. With regard to the data, in 2023, when we got the state accountability results, this team came in that summer, June of 2023. We just taken the state as exam. There were 121 D and F rated campuses. So for your listeners, Texas has, well, most of them are in Texas, but A through F. So D and F camps, 121. 2 years later, we had only 16 D camps and no F camps. So think about the change of that. Also, the minority achievement gap has been closing incredibly, and this is not just STAR. 3 weeks ago at a board meeting, actually 4 weeks ago at a board meeting, the NWEA researchers, the main one was Dr. Scott Peters, analyzed our data for 2.5 years, right? Because we just finished in January the middle of the year NWEA exam, and we have the first 2 years, and it was the largest growth they'd ever seen. And the movement of the achievement percentile, which also showed that not only are we moving that academic median percentile to the 60s, starting below average in most cases across the country. It's an enormous 50. The median is 50 across the country. We moved it in just 2.5 years, 12, 13, 14 points for our Black and Hispanic kids. And our white and Asian kids did well too. They moved 3 or 4 points. But for the time, we moved our Black and Hispanic 12, 13 points.
Some of our local media loves to say things, about HISD and the work that you guys are doing. Do you get some parents that actually come up to you? I got to think that they're very thankful, right? And because nobody reports on that, right? Nobody reports on the second grader that didn't have a chance, and now all of a sudden they're moving in the right direction. But I got to think you have at least 1 or 2 instances where a parent is like, "Look, I'm happy that you're there doing what you're doing because it's my kid in that seat."
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of anecdotes like that, but we did a survey back in December of all of our parents, so about 4 months ago, and the results are that 84% of all parents would recommend their school to another parent. And not only that, as far as the direction of the district, so it's like, first of all, it's like Congress, right? You may like your congressman, but you don't like Congress. So, but in our case, 67% said that they agree or strongly agree with the direction of the district, and only 10 or 11% said they disagree or strongly disagree. So only 10 or 11% disagree or strongly disagree in the direction. And I think any politician would have liked those favorability ratings. So
No doubt. I'm surprised they're not all jumping back on board after. You know how that goes, right? everybody loves success. So it's quickly they start turning the bandwagon around. Oh man, that's fantastic. I mean, all of that data is unbelievable, and it gives me a lot of pride, not only being a former HISD member, but it's my city, and it's important to me, and 100%. What is in the best interest of the students of our city will determine how our city evolves in a good way or a bad way, and that's just the truth of it. So that's the ultimate measure in my view. Okay. I know we're running up against time a little bit. I got to ask some selfish questions, and what I mean by that is because of I work in the AI space. I have for a couple of years. I know y'all have. I love everything career in tech. I know y'all are transforming, reforming some of your schools. Can you just share a little bit about um, what some schools are going to undergo, and the kind of the goal for some of the transformation of the schools and the career in tech, and all of the things that are going on?
Yeah, so, just like a lot of places, we are upgrading our career tech ed offerings and what we call the programs of study. And so we're sunsetting the programs of study that are not high wage, high demand, high skill jobs, and adding programs of study that are, and adding programs of study that are more geared to an AI enabled world and workplace. We're also building a new career tech ed center. We're breaking ground this year in the fall on a new building, and then an extension to an old career tech ed center, existing career tech ed center. And then we're working with Houston Community College on two other career tech ed centers that we're going to partner with them to do. So we're doing all of that. But what I'm most excited about is that we're doing something in third through eighth grade related to year 2030, year 2035 competencies. So the big initiative is all of our NES, there's 130 of them. NES stands for New Education System Schools. So whole-scale systemic reform at those schools. Those schools are going to be converted over time. The evolution of them, this thing we call Future 2. So next year we'll have 6. The following year we'll have 26. Then we'll have 50, then 75, and then 100 in the next several years.
What are those going to look like? If I just give me a little tease, you don't have to give me all of the behind the scenes stuff, but is there?
Real quick, the morning looks very similar to NES, meaning rigorous instruction on reading, math, science, and art of thinking, which we've had for the last 3 years, art of thinking course. And we're way ahead. Art of thinking includes information literacy, problem solving, critical thinking. And we're infusing decision making in the problem solving. Anyway, that's a course that we've had for 3 years. We're going to continue to have that. The afternoon, though, is all about experiences and activities that are hands-on, but mostly about tied to the values and competencies we think are necessary for year 2030, year 2035 graduate. Things like critical thinking, decision making, but working in team, leadership, empathy, growing a perspective, understanding cultures, working with AI, philosophy. So all of those things to get a child ready for a different world of work.
That makes me very excited, and quite frankly, not a lot of schools talking about this, and it's something that I follow religiously, and think that how can we not be moving in this direction when all of the data, all of our workforce, all of our economy is geared towards tech and how we think about tech and your ability to problem solve, not one way but multiple ways, because who knows what jobs will be available, and which new jobs that we can't even think about or will be created. So our kids have to be thinking in those terms. So I applaud you for that, and quite frankly wish other districts would move in that direction sooner rather than later. Final thoughts, anything that you wanted that you want to share with us? And this is a leadership podcast. We've got a bunch of aspiring leaders and current soups that listen and comment. So any big ticket items that you want to share about HISD and the coming years?
Yeah, I would tell my colleagues, look, the next several years is going to be the wild, wild west of education because of the AI enabled world and workplace, but also all these tools that are being piloted. And then there's vouchers, there's micro schools, there's virtual schools, there's homeschool, there's all kinds of things. And the traditional public education system, especially in medium and large district, is not working. They're not working. And so the public education system is at a nexus point, and it needs transformation. And not only do districts need to get kids to read, write, and do math at grade level, but if they're not spending a little bit of their time trying to get kids ready for the different world and workplace, I'm not sure they're doing the kids a favor. So I tell everybody, now's the time to be bold. This notion of going slow to go fast, throw that in the dump heap, uh, and do something bold and dramatic because the kids require it.
I love it. I've been saying for quite some time that education is finally in a risk on phase. Like, like the financial markets, it has to be risk on. You're absolutely right. We've got to take some risks. Uh, well, you heard it here first. Dealing with school boards is more difficult than dealing with Gorbachev. So I appreciate that that insight. I'm sure you got some. So at some point, we have dinner or something, or I get you off camera. You got to tell me some of those stories because I'm sure you have some great ones. But Mike, thank you so much as always for joining me and sharing some wisdom. But more importantly than that, thank you for leading this school district and providing outcomes for our students that we can all be proud of and that we so that they'll have a future. And thank you and the team for all the work that y'all continue to do. And please, if you're a parent and you want to check out some schools, HISD, you need to look into what's going on there because there are some outstanding opportunities for students and if teachers as well. I mean, if you want to be a part of transformation, this is the place to go. So, Mike, thank you so much, and thank you for joining us on the TALAS Voice.
Thanks, Rick. Anytime.